If you're anything like me, you might have a house full of unfinished projects all over the place. You have so many ideas and things that you want to do and things that you've started doing and things that you got really close to finishing, but very few things that are actually finished. And I find myself in that boat all the time. So what those projects are, that's going to differ from person to person. But just to give you an example, I have a couple of unfinished short stories, unfinished nonfiction book that I've been working on about books. I have a couple of unfinished board games that are lying in boxes in various states of development. I have the first draft of a screenplay that I've been attempting to turn into a novel, and not to mention all the different video ideas that I've written down and recorded scripts for, but not actually finished editing. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of fun to have a backlog of things that I can pull from at different times if I want to. And not every project or idea that I have has to be completed. It's okay for things to go unfinished occasionally. But I'd like to finish some things. I really do enjoy finishing projects and putting them out for my friends and family to see. So if you find yourself in a similar scenario where you have a bunch of creative projects that are somewhere between started and finished, and you'd like for them to be done so you can move on to other things and you can really present it to the world, I'd like to suggest one really simple and tiny trick that's helped me a ton with this, and I think it might help you as well. Now, this isn't groundbreaking or crazy or based in science, and in fact, it's entirely possible that you already did this step, but it has been immensely helpful for me. And that one simple action that I take that really helps is name your projects. That simple act is going to help you in 3 really specific ways. The first way that naming your projects is going to help you finish them is when you name something, you become attached to it, which is why we, obviously, among other reasons, why we name our children and our pets and even our cars. My car's name is Bethany. And once you've named something, you become really attached to it. It's mine. This is my thing. This is my baby. I'm not going to let it go. And so for that reason, once you've named your project, you're much more likely to come back to it and revisit it and give it care and attention and thought because it's a real thing. You named it, you took ownership over it. And it's much harder to abandon, say, a novel with a name than it is to abandon a novel idea, even if you put the same amount of work into both pieces. The second way that naming your work is really going to help you out is that it clarifies what the work is really about. Now, titles don't always work like this, but very often the title tells you what the project is about. So for example, Bruno Major's wonderful album, A Song for Every Moon, is an album with 12 songs. He released 1 song a month for a year. Now, I don't know exactly what order he decided to name and work on his project in, but I can imagine that knowing, okay, I'm sitting down to work on a project called A Song for Every Moon would have helped him know, okay, I'm making a song this month, I'm going to make a song next month, and then after this, after 12 of them, I'm going to be done. And so the title kind of clarifies your focus and reminds you that you're working on a specific thing. And then thirdly, and maybe most importantly, when you name a project, it becomes concrete and memorable. If you don't name your work, if it's just an untitled story, it's pretty easy to actually over time forget that you even had the project in the first place. It's very easy to forget the details of the project. Even if you wrote it down, if you don't remember to go back and look for it, you'll never see it. So by naming the project, you're taking it out of the abstract world of an idea and you're bringing it into the concrete world of a project. This is something legit that I could come back and revisit later. And that's where I think this point is really important. When you name a project like this and you make it memorable, even if you don't have the time to finish it right now or you don't finish it in this little phase of life, you'll still remember later when you do have time. For example, I have a short story I wrote last year that I really love. It's called Permanent Vern, and I wrote it last year, but I didn't start it last year. I actually started it like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And the version I started 4 or 5 years ago was only ever like 3 paragraphs long. I wrote it on some Post-it notes, and I kind of knew where I wanted to go with it, but I never really finished it. But even though I abandoned the project after it was only a couple of paragraphs deep, since it had a name, right, Permanent Vern, when I wanted to write a story a couple of years later, because I had the same sort of emotions that had driven me to start writing in the first place the first time a couple of years ago, I was able to think, wait, I have a story that I started called Permanent Vern, and I'd like to finish that. But if I hadn't named it, I wouldn't have had that old story to pull from in the first place, and it would have just been lost. So to recap, when you name your projects, you're doing 3 really important things. Number 1, you're increasing your attachment to the project, so you're less likely to give up. Number 2, you're clarifying what you actually want to do with the project, so you know what you're doing. And number 3, you're making it more memorable and concrete for yourself, so if you aren't able to finish it, you're giving yourself a shot to finish it in the future. So that's my advice. Name your projects. I mean, you're going to need a title for the project anyway one day when you're finished, right? And I bet pretty much anything that you're going to become much more excited about your work the minute it's got a name. So speaking of projects that have names, I've got to run. I'm working on a 18-card micro game called Stuffed. It's about Greek American Thanksgiving food. I was working on this game last fall and then I sort of abandoned it, but since I gave it a name, I was able to remember it this year, and now I'm actually finishing it. So look forward to updating you on that when it's done. In the meantime, go name your projects and then go work on them. Have a great day, friends, and I'll see you next time.